Okay, finally, nervous system. Personally, my weakest unit, so sorry if I fumble. Um, Allows the individual to respond to both internal and external stimuli. So there are internal stimuli, such as all these, and external, such as the things in your environment, or even pain. So things that do touch you, for example. We have the central nervous system and the peripheral nervous system. Central only including your brain and spinal, and peripheral meaning everything else. If you think about central, like your computer, peripheral, like your peripherals, your mouse and keyboard. And they work together to coordinate stuff. So your CNS, brain and cranial, spinal cord for spinal. And then your periphery, a nervous system, includes your autonomic and somatic. Somatic meaning bodily, right? So voluntary choices, your own actions. Skeletal muscles, skin and joints. Autonomic system, involuntary, such as you can't tell your heart to stop beating, you can't stop blinking. Your parasympathetic system and sympathetic system lay under this, which we learned about earlier. Your fight or flight and your calming. So onto nerve cells, which are neurons here. So this end here is dendrites, and the cell body is represented by this wherever the nucleus is. These blue lumps here are Schwann cells, which are layers of myelin fat, I think. And the nodes of Ranvier are the areas in between these Schwann cells. The axon bulbs here, or terminals, are used to receive signals. Or wait, no, they send out signals. Yeah. So dendrites will receive things and your bulbs will send things away. And that's always true. And in diagrams, you might notice that, oh, hey, this doesn't look like a dendrite like it does here, or an axon like it does here, but that's actually because axons and dendrites are the same thing. It's the direction of them that matters the most. So the cell body is the main section containing the cytoplasm and organelles of this nerve cell. It supplies nutrients and energy to all the parts of the cell, this elongated cell. The dendrites will conduct nerve pulses towards, the axon will conduct things away, and it's composed of many parts. There's the Schwann cells, which have this outer layer, a neurolemma, and the inner layers, the myelin sheath. I was right, thank God. So they'll wrap up here, and this is what the cross section might look like. The middle will be, they surround the axon, which looks like a pole in the middle. So imagine like wrapping a bunch of tape around a light post. And the neurolemma is the outermost layer, and then everything in between is the myelin layer. They tightly wrap around the axon core and act like insulation. And this is really important because it speeds up your reaction speeds and the speed at which the signals can travel. I'm guessing has to do with the insulation part here. The nodes of Ranvier are gaps between these Schwann cells where action potentials occur. And these are important because this is how your electricity is conducted to cause brain things to happen. The axon bulbs, the ends contain chemicals known as neurotransmitters, and they're used in synapse. There are three types of neurons. There are sensory neurons, motor neurons, and these interneurons, which are in between the sensory and motor neurons. Sensory neurons, also known as input or afferent neurons, they pick up stimuli from the receptor, the dendrite, transform it into an impulse, and send the impulse to your central nervous system. They have a long dendrite and a short axon because they don't need to send it far, but they need to receive it from a further place, such as from the tips of your fingers. Motor neurons, known as output or efferent neurons, efferent, carries impulses from central nervous system to the effectors, such as your muscles. So, for example, when your palm is touched, or I don't know, someone stabs it with a knife, your the dendrites in your sensory neurons will pick it up from the receptors there. You'll go ow in your brain, and your motor neurons will send a signal back for your hand to flinch away. So the long axons will allow you to send it from a further distance. So basically, remember that the nerves are kind of lazy, and they'll try and reach as far as possible to do what they need to do. So the long dendrites. So here's a long D and short A for the sensory neurons. Motor neurons have a short D and a long A. Take that how you will. Interneurons are found in between the sensory and motor neurons, and they mostly in the spinal cord. They receive from the sensory and send them to other interneurons or motor neurons. They have a short dendrite and long or short axon. But more usually, they have a long axon because they need to send signals. This is an example of the thing we covered in class. So the pain stimulus And notice how this does not necessarily look like a dendrite, but this is a dendrite actually. Your cell body is here. And these are your axons, and this is an interneuron. You can see by the cell body here, it's a distinct cell. Then you have the short dendrites here and a long axon to send back to the motor neurons, back to the muscles. Transmission of nerve impulses, this is a big deal. So this is action potentials. When a stimulus is detected by your receptors, nerve impulses are generated and transmitted across sensory neurons, then passed onto interneurons and motor neurons. These nerve impulses are waves of positive charges transmitted across these neurons, and when nerve impulses are transmitted along a neuron at the nodes, it is called an action potential. So you get many action potentials to cause one full synapse. So to result in a synapse from a receptor, you need many action potentials. Okay, and here are the notes for the thing I don't know too well. So transmission of a nerve impulse, you start from a resting potential of -70, and this is a relative charge. From the inside is -70 and the outside is zero relatively. And when the axon is not conducting, there's this voltage difference called the membrane potential between the axoplasm, which is inside the neuron, and the outside. The inside is negative and the outside is positive, therefore it is polarized. Notice how the Na plus and the K plus ions both have +1 charge, but it's because the sodium potassium pump, 2 sodium is pumped out and 3 potassium are pumped in. Oh no, 3 sodium are pumped out and 2 potassium are pumped in. And that's why the charge difference is made. So yeah, sodium potassium keeps Na outside and low inside. And this requires energy in the form of ATP. So the resting potential starts at -70. The axon becomes rapidly positive if the -50 millivolt is reached, which is when your sodium potassium pumps hits the right level. And your sodium's channels will open in the axon membrane, and sodium will rapidly diffuse down the concentration gradient, so it'll come in. And then sodium will come in and potassium will leave. So in this intermediate state, there are both potassium and sodium ions inside. So instead of -70, you're at +30 relative charge. And your repolarization, you will return to resting potential, so back to step 1, as the potassium ions are open, are moved outside. So sodium starts outside, potassium inside. I remember because Na has 2 letters, so it's out. K only has 1 letter, so it's in. The shorter word for the shorter word, like that. And it's also 3 because it's 3 letters for out, and it's in because it's 2 letters for in. So it's 3 to 2, this ratio. And that's it for that.